Welcome to First and 30. I'm Nick.
And I'm Antonino.
We're two 30-something-year-old guys who take the best ultimate reality television show in this hemisphere, American football, through four uncensored downs of mostly unbiased opinion and some analysis.
In a game broken down into 10-yard segments, we take it with you one step at a time.
That's First and 30.
Let's go for it.
Welcome to the First and 30 podcast, season 2, episode 18. It's not like we're not keeping track or anything. And this is a special episode, Antonino, because this is the free agency frenzy. I didn't tell you I was going to do that. I'm feeling the energy.
Oh, I feel it through the microphone here. This is amazing. Happy New Year. Happy League New Year. Everyone gets a shiny toy, except for maybe the Cowboys. But we won't go there yet.
Well, for those listening, we're recording after a long day of work. It is Wednesday afternoon. Free agency officially began, even though what's with the tampering period? Because that's when free agency actually began, which was Monday when the league tampering period commenced and teams were allowed to start negotiating contracts. So all the news was already pouring in over the past few days, but we wanted to hold off on recording this episode today. That way we have the live breaking latest news, the most up to date for everybody. That way we're not saying things that retroactively don't happen. So this is live and coming at you.
I have my Twitter feed constantly being refreshed. My thumb is getting an exercise the past 3 days. We're going to give it to you as it comes in.
Antonino, let's get into our four downs. Just for those listening, all four downs today are going to be about all the recent free agency transactions. We're going to kind of break things down into different segments here, but we're going to kick things off. First down, who got the Chedda, Antonino? What were some of that biggest contracts that we saw over the past 48 to 72 hours?
Who got the Chedda? Because we're talking over $1 billion of contract money has been signed upon.
Wow.
Billion. That's with a B. Billion. And to top that list, our boy, none other than, do you like that? Kirk Cousins, 4-year, $180 million, the genius of making contracts. This guy's cashed in at every team he's been to. Gosh, I hope he does good in Atlanta.
Yeah, I do too. It's a big signing for Atlanta. They needed a quarterback. We won't get into it too much, but we want to kind of run through some of the big contracts that we saw. Well, how about my guy, Chris Jones? He got himself a 5-year, $158 million.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
With $95 million guaranteed by the Chiefs. That's quite rich for my pocketbooks, but geez, congratulations to Chris Jones. But I mean, were any of these surprises to you? Kirk Cousins, Chris Jones, big contracts. Was it kind of like in line with what you would have expected?
Yeah, to be expected. I know Chris Jones, I'm sure he had a little help there because Patrick Mahomes would later restructure his contract to free up another $20 million. And I think they're also shopping Snead around a little bit.
Yeah.
So not surprised there. What I am surprised about is Robert Hunt, the guard, going to Carolina. 5-year, $100 million. These guards in this free agency have been paid, all the guards.
Yeah, I believe he's now the highest paid guard in the NFL. I think I read that somewhere. So $63 million guaranteed. Carolina went spending because they also picked up Damian Lewis, another guard, 4 years, $53 million, with 26.2 guaranteed. So Carolina obviously had a priority heading into free agency, and that was bolstering that offensive line.
Jeez, yeah, they had money to blow in this free agency, and you're seeing that firsthand. Another big number, Matabuke with the Ravens, 4-year, $98 million. I know that's kind of had some side effects here. You've seen the Ravens lose a handful of players, but man, talk about big money for a big player.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Well, look at these names though, man. Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, also 4 years, 110 million to go play with the Raiders. But what's a theme? What's standing out to you here? Like what's kind of a commonality between some of these guys that are getting these gigantic Chedda contracts?
It's the men in the trenches, the
Yeah.
linemen, offensive line, defensive line. They just get the money in the trenches. That's where games are won and lost, baby.
Yeah, I mean that stood out to me. It obviously sets the precedent that teams are trying to and will invest heavily into their offensive and defensive lines. Outside of the quarterback, those are probably some of the most valuable positions to really put in and open up the pocketbooks for. Outside of edge rushers, which speaking of edge rushers, we saw a few names go off the board here that we're going to highlight with Danielle Hunter, the edge rusher formerly playing for the Vikings. He gets a 2-year, $49 million contract with Houston. I think it's only a shorter contract because of his age, but geez, that's almost 25 million a year for this guy. And then Jonathan Grenard, the other edge rusher coming from Houston. Was he on Houston? Yeah. And
Yep,
then he
yep,
goes to Minnesota, 4 years, 76 million.
yep. Those two swap places right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just crazy the amount of money. Is it they're getting paid more, or is it just because the cap space went up?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. But wait a second, Nick, I think I have some breaking news here on my Twitter feed with all my inside sources that we do have the Raiders. The Raiders have released Hunter Renfro and Jimmy G.
Hmm. That's probably to free up some cap space for Mr. Christian Wilkins that they just gave $110 million to.
They sure did talk about overpay. My goodness. But hey, that was one of my targets, and he was a top prize of this free agency because Chris Jones was signed prior to it starting. So Christian Wilkins going to Raider Nation.
Yeah, big signing and kind of sad to see Jimmy G already gone. Hunter Renfro got that big contract just last offseason and he did nothing with it. Pretty unproductive last year because of injury. So not super shocked to hear about that news. But thanks, Antonino. I think let's have you just staying on your phone throughout this episode. Just monitor that Twitter feed and let us know in between downs or near the end of downs what's breaking, what's the latest. So Antonino's going to keep a pulse on this for us, everyone. So
Roger
just
that.
be on the lookout.
I'm on it.
All right, man. How about we move into second down? Because we hear all these big names, we heard all these big contracts. Who were some of the winners and losers of free agency to this point? Because there definitely have been some winners that we've noticed. And in the inverse, there's been some teams that have overspent or done some pretty questionable things, opening up their pocketbooks for some of these players. So what's one group or one person, team, player that's been a big winner so far in free agency for you?
You know, there's one specific position group that caught my eye here, and it's been abused in the most recent past, but running backs actually got paid. So starting with Saquon Barkley, 3 years, 37.5 million, changing colors, going from one rival to another. I know there's some issues there, but Josh Jacobs, 4 years, 48 million. That just seems weird to see Josh Jacobs in a Packers uniform. I can't even envision that.
That one came out of left field. I did not expect Jacobs to go to Green Bay, but it makes sense what Green Bay later on did, letting Aaron Jones go, who then immediately signs with another divisional rival. The Minnesota Vikings pick him up on a 1-year, $7 million contract. But nonetheless, really odd seeing Josh Jacobs go to Green Bay. But if you remember, man, they were in the mix for Jonathan Taylor. You remember when there was all that trade talk? Green Bay was eyeing a running back near the end of training camp and preseason last year. They didn't land Jonathan Taylor. They go for Josh Jacobs this year. You saw it coming though. Aaron Jones had 17 million of cap hit coming this season, so there was no way they were going to keep him on the team.
Yeah, that's the thing around this time of year. There's going to be business decisions made, and there's going to be your favorite player, and they're going to get released or cut or traded, and it's going to hurt. But this is a business at the end of the day.
It seems like you're alluding to somebody here. You have a favorite player getting cut? Or you're not hinting at Mr. Joe Mixon, are you?
Joe Mixon, I miss you.
Yeah, Joe Mixon got traded to the Texans, for those who don't know. I don't think we're going to be talking about him at all. So, well,
Save the tears.
yeah, right. Well, there is a few other names here. Tony Pollard, he switches jerseys too, signs a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Titans. Big name. And I know the Ravens fans that are listening are probably really hyped about this one. Derrick Henry, 2 years up to 20 million based off of incentives. Do you like that one?
30 years old. I love me some Derrick Henry. I'm not going to lie. The king. I can't wait for those stiff arms. Hopefully not against the Bengals, but I can't wait for those stiff arms, those rumbling runs like 50 yards down the field. But, you can smile at that, but they lost some players, and I think that's going to be a big hurting to their playoff chances.
You're just being a hater, man.
Gosh,
Always a hater.
I'm so happy to see they lost like 8 players.
They haven't been able to quite reload, but yeah, there was a few other names here we'll just throw out there for those that haven't been keeping a pulse on all this. DeAndre Swift, the former Eagle running back, obviously he walks since the Eagles go ahead and pick up Barkley, but Swift signs a 3-year, $24 million deal with Chicago. And then the last name I'm going to mention here, Austin Eckler, 2 years, 8 million with Washington. I think he's pretty much just replacing Antonio Gibson's role for Washington as kind of like that third down receiving back. So a lot of running backs getting contracts. That was a point of contention last year. So yeah, I think running backs are winners. Do you have any other winners? Maybe one or two more before we focus on those losers of the free agency?
I mean, I can't help myself. I'm going to bring our guy, Cole's specialist, Kirk Cousins, back into the conversation because Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins, add him to Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan, and they've been getting other pieces too here. I think they just picked up a receiver, possibly Mooney, if I saw correctly.
Yeah.
So they got weapons there. I'm excited to see what happens in Atlanta this year. They got some playmakers.
You know who I'm going to add to that winners list? Fantasy owners of Atlanta Falcons skill players are winners this year. So go ahead, fire it up, draft Kyle Pitts, draft Drake London high, draft Bijan in the first round. They finally have a competent quarterback. That's why I was excited. So I felt
Yeah,
like I was a winner. If only it happened last year.
yeah, a year too late for some of us.
You're too late. Anthony, I'm going to add one more quick one here. I think a winner of all this is Bryce Young. I
Ooh.
mean, he got himself two guards. The Panthers paid premium dollar for two guards. And yesterday, I saw that Carolina made a trade for Deontay Johnson, the receiver for Pittsburgh. So they're adding some weapons there. They're also adding more to the offensive line to protect Bryce Young, which was a big issue last year. He was getting beaten up left and right. So big moves there for Carolina. But let's flip things real quick here. Let's go on the inverse and talk about losers because we were just celebrating Bryce Young as a winner. But do you think the Panthers were big losers so far, even though they're spending this money on these guys?
Oh boy, yep. Let's go right back to Carolina, okay? Because these guys don't seem to know how compensation works. Like they traded Christian McCaffrey for absolutely nothing the other year. Brian Burns, they traded him for what? A bag of chips? What's going on here? They're just
Hmm.
giving up all their assets and not getting much in return.
Yeah, and what it was a season or two ago, somebody went knocking on the door at Carolina asking about Brian Burns, and I think the offer was two first round picks. It might have been Seattle. I don't recall the exact team, but yeah, Carolina gets a second round pick for Brian Burns, and I think a few late round picks. So really not much for a dude that then gets paid big dollar by the Giants. I think what 150 million, something crazy like that.
That's right. And then the worst part about it is they're even getting trashed on social media by the country singer Luke Combs, I believe his name
Oh
is.
yeah, yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
he called them out. He says this is beginning to be a slow torture.
I would have to. You know what else is beginning to be a slow torture? We got one more here. One more big loser. We could talk about the Vikings, but we don't have enough time for the Vikings. They're losers because they lost their quarterback. Whatever. Man,
Hmm?
slow torture. And now, how about my Cowboys?
Oh, but Jerry Jones is all in.
Oh yeah. If this is what all in looks like, I'd hate to see what a rest day is like for Jerry Jones. Like, dude, here we are, Wednesday evening. There's a flurry of action. Team, you're over here getting hyped about your Bengals and the possibility of maybe Justin Jefferson getting traded. I know you have your eyes on that, but here I am, just hoping that Dallas signs like a second string linebacker for gosh sake. Like, come on, man. Nothing. This is unreal.
Yeah, I feel for you, man, because this is the most exciting time of the year. But don't lose hope yet. I feel like they may release a couple players and get some cap space, and they'll surprise you here in the next 24 hours.
I hope so. But how about this, man? Let's hop into third down, third and long. What about the biggest free agency steals? There's been a few names that have surfaced, but I'm kind of thinking best bang for your buck. So guys that you didn't have to spend too much for, but you're getting a lot of value in return.
I'm trying not to be biased here, as always. I try not to be biased. But those Cincinnati Bengals picked up a safety from our local Baltimore Ravens, Geno Stone. Okay. He had 7 interceptions last year. I don't care if people say they think they were lucky. You got to be on the field, you got to make the plays. And he had 7 interceptions. But we got him on a 2 year, $15 million contract, 7 mil a year. That's insane. The guy's young. That's a bargain of a contract. And he plays coverage as a free safety with the top. He's top 5 in the league. He does not give up big chunk plays. And last year, the Bengals gave up the most chunk plays. So
Mm.
we perfectly fit that need in our secondary. And we're able to move Dax Hill from free safety down into the box where he likes to play. So we got better in so many ways with that addition. And I cannot wait to see that defense in action.
What do you think Ravens fans are thinking right now to see this guy that, like you mentioned, 7 picks last year for Baltimore was a big part of that Mike McDonald defense and why the Ravens defense was at the end of the season, regular season, ranked number 1 in the league. Have you heard from any Ravens fans? I know you've been diligently on the phone. I'm sure there's been some people yapping at you about this. What's the consensus and the opinion right now?
As soon as the Bengals sign him, all of a sudden, oh, he wasn't that good anyway. Oh,
Oh,
not a big deal, not a major
dang.
loss. And then they lose Patrick Queen to the Steelers. Oh, whatever. And then they sign Derrick Henry. Or yeah, Derrick Henry. And then they're in the clouds again. They're on cloud 9. So
They forgot all of that happened. They're like,
exactly.
oh, whatever.
And I can guarantee you the Ravens will not be in the top third of defense this year.
What?
That's a guarantee.
So you think Patrick Queen and Geno Stone were that impactful to their success? What about what's his name? Kyle Hamilton. He's probably the best safety in the league right now.
Yep, they lost a couple other pieces too here. Don't forget, not just on. I think it works both ways. They lost their linebacker Tyus Bowser. They lost another couple special teams players, but then they also lost Morgan Moses. So the Ravens are leaking. Their boat is leaking from all sides here. So it's
Whoa.
just trending down. So be happy about your Derrick Henry signing. Yay, hooray, 30-year-old running back. Yay. But you guys are leaking at the seams here, folks.
Wow, man. Look, season's over and you still can't contain Antonino from just putting those low jabs for Ravens fans. Well, man, I'm gonna pull you away from there. Good, get the teeth off of the Ravens for a second. There was one name, and we got to talk about this guy for a little bit because this is by far the biggest bargain, bang for your buck, steal of the entire free agency. And that's the Steelers, your divisional rival, going out and picking up Russ, let him cook Wilson 1 year on a league minimum $1.2 million contract. And Antonino, ask me, how is a guy who's, a multiple time Pro Bowler, Mr. Let's Ride, how the heck did the Steelers afford him on this dime? Ask me.
Nick, what kind of funny business is going on here?
I'll tell you, man. You know how kind and philanthropic the Denver Broncos are? They're going ahead and paying Russ 39 million next season for his services to go play for a conference contender. So yeah, Denver still has Russ on their payroll. They're cashing that check. This, I feel so bad for Broncos fans.
Denver, I guess they're super nice in the Mile High City. More power to them. But geez, I think the Steelers got better here. I like Russell. I'm going to toot that horn like I did all last year.
Yeah, I know you
I think
do.
Russell Wilson is great. There was a stretch there where he beat like Buffalo, the Chiefs. He beat all these contenders all in a row. They were in the playoff picture. And then all of a sudden, contract numbers got in the way. Watch out for those Steelers. I am worried about this one.
I am too. I think this was a great signing for them. They were legitimately a quarterback away from being a true contender last year. I mean, realistically, they had no business even making the playoffs because of how poor their quarterback play was. But the rest of the team was built pretty well. Good running game, good receivers, really good defense with Watt. So,
I have breaking news here, and this is a big one. Like, my hands are shaking. There's a huge deal here. I know things have slowed down since Monday. The Tennessee Titans have signed Calvin Ridley, huge receiver on the market out of Jacksonville, to a 4-year, $92 million
whoa,
contract,
no,
50 million guaranteed. Calvin
what?
Ridley to Tennessee. Talk about a team spending money. The Tennessee Titans are on the move.
Wow. That's an overpay. I mean, I for sure, right? They overpaid.
I think this is too much money and they don't have quality players to spend it on, and they're just letting it rip this offseason.
Oh my gosh. What's the premise behind this? I guess you have a young quarterback, Will Levis. You're trying to give him some kind of weapon on the outside because the Titans have DeAndre Hopkins still. Has been a bust to this point, so they needed somebody else maybe to stretch the defense. But still, Ridley, he hasn't been like relevant in about 2 seasons, 3 seasons now.
Yeah, mind you, they do have a new head coach, and this head coach is offensive minded. He came from
Hmm.
Cincinnati, offensive coordinator, and he wants his weapons on offense now. They signed offensive lineman in free agency a few days ago, or rumored agreed to, and
Yeah.
now they get a receiver. So they're getting their pieces, and they signed a cornerback the other day, Awuzie, as well, to a huge contract coming off an ACL a year and a half ago. So big money coming out of Tennessee. Calvin Ridley to the Titans.
Yeah. Wow. Big signing. Well, thanks for reporting that breaking news. Hopefully we get some more from you here before the show wraps up. But Antonino, let's move into fourth and forever. And I just want to go through some instant reactions. I'm going to list some players out here. We have more free agency signings that we want to at least plug and put out there for the listeners to hear. But I want to get your grade and I'll give you my grade. So it'll be kind of instant. I'm just going to say a name. I'll tell you the contract, what team they signed for, and you tell me based off of like the numbers, the fit, just a rough estimate of what you would grade that. So for those that were not attending classes, an A is really good and F's really bad. So just figured I'd break that down. So you ready for this, man?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we chatted a little bit about that ex-Baltimore Ravens linebacker Patrick Queen. You mentioned that he signed a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which approximates out to be a 3-year, $41 million contract. Give it to me, man. What are you grading this transaction for Pittsburgh and Patrick Queen?
I'm going to keep a blind eye to the money with this one because the Pittsburgh Steelers had a need and they fit it perfectly. I'm going to give this grade an A minus. They
Ooh,
filled the linebackers for Pittsburgh were a need. They dealt with injuries last year. Patrick Queen is a great coverage linebacker. He's gotten so much better in so many ways. I think that's a perfect fit. I'm giving it A minus just because I have a bitter taste in my mouth with these players going to rival teams from the Ravens to Pittsburgh. Like, what's going on here? There's no such thing as rivalries anymore.
I'll give you a quick grade. I give it a B. A lot of the positives that you said, great linebacker, I think. It seems like a good fit, good need for Pittsburgh. I don't know, kind of a big contract, I think, for him, but we'll see how it pans out. How about Xavier McKinney, safety, used to play for the New York Giants. He signs a 4-year, $68 million contract with the Green Bay Packers, who are big spenders, it seemed like the other day.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a B. Great player. Just that's a high price tag. I think he was actually the highest paid safety of this
Yeah.
free agency, so that's kind of pricey. So I give it a B.
I'm gonna go B plus. I think young safety, 25, former first round pick. I think I mentioned last week in last week's episode he was one of my top target guys, so I have a little bit more of a bias and a preference because if I were going out signing safeties, this was the guy that I would have targeted too. It is a little pricey, but I think Green Bay, they saw their guy, they knew what they wanted, were going to open up the checkbook for him. So B plus for me. All right, Bryce Huff. Edge rusher. He played for the Jets previously. He goes ahead and signs a 3-year, $51 million contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. What's the
Yeah,
grade, Antonino?
B plus. Philadelphia's having a great offseason. They really got some pieces that they're adding to that defense. I'm excited to see. It's hard to find a good edge guy, and he's definitely on the top of the class. So B plus.
Yeah, I'll give maybe like a C plus, B minus. I don't
Ooh,
want to give the Eagles any good grades here.
fair
C
enough.
plus, yeah, we're gonna go C plus. He's a Jet that goes to the Eagles. I don't like either team. This is like the most non-analytical grade. It's completely just me being a hater. Okay, Michael Pittman. He goes 3 years, 71 million, signs back with Indianapolis. What you think?
They have some holes to fill. I know they've been re-signing a lot of their own players, but I feel like they could have used this money better. It's 3 years, 71 million. I give it a C. And I don't even know who's going to throw him the ball. I know they got the rookie quarterback, Richardson.
Anthony Richardson. What?
Yeah, but I'm not buying it. That's a lot. They could have used that money elsewhere. I'm going to give it a C.
I'll go with a B, just a solid B. He was a good
Fair.
player for them last year, pretty solid, consistent. I think they wanted to keep him in the room, so it'll be good for Anthony Richardson too. He needs a number one target. Baker Mayfield, man, he re-signs with Tampa, 3-year, $100 million, up to 115 million. Or
Yeah,
crazy like that.
with incentives up to 115 million. So good for him. He really
Yeah,
cashed in. He was like on the street the year before, got signed by the Rams for a couple games, came out, he got the bag. So good for him. I give it an A.
I'll give it an A too. I like Baker. I like the deal. I don't think Tampa Bay overspent for him either. What this is about 32 something million a year, which is pretty cheap for a quarterback. And Baker was quote unquote a Pro Bowler last year. So good for him. Good for Tampa Bay for keeping him. One more, man, because I want to wrap it up with one of your big Bengal signings since we couldn't talk about any Cowboy signings here. Zach Moss, he goes 2 years, 8 million for Cincinnati, but at a cost. Cincinnati goes ahead and trades Joe Mixon right before this deal is done, I believe. And yeah, so basically replacing Joe Mixon for Zach Moss. How are you feeling about this one?
I give this an A plus 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 plus
Oh my
plus 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 plus
gosh.
plus plus plus
Oh
plus
gosh.
plus Zach Moss breakout year last year with the Colts. Not only did we save $2 million by switching out Mixon with Moss, but Moss is the best running back out of the 11 formation. We run a lot out of shotgun, so he works perfectly for the formations we run. His yards per carry out of shotgun, fifth in the league. His yardage per carry over expectation was in the top quarter of the league. This guy is ready to break out, and he's going to do it in Cincinnati.
Wow. I think there's definitely no bias in that grade right there. You would be a terrible teacher too, man. A plus 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 plus. Gee,
It's a lot
I'll
of
give it
pluses.
I'll give it a B plus. I think he is going to fit in well with the Bengals. I think the Bengals, their game plan is just going to be to throw the ball like 60 times with Joe Burrow.
I have amazing dreams about that happening.
Oh, I bet you do. All right, man. There's some more breaking news, right? I think yeah, what's going on?
I got one more breaking news here. I know it's coming in a little slower on Wednesday as compared to Monday, but we got one more for you before this episode ends. Bobby Wagner, longtime Seattle Seahawks linebacker, signs with the Washington Commanders 1 year, $8.5 million. And they are sure beefing up on their veterans here. They have made great additions to that team. Zach Ertz, a veteran, Austin Eckler. They're really putting together a squad. Marcus Mariota, the safety Jeremy Chin. I'm impressed. Dante Fowler Jr. from your Cowboys. Dorrance Armstrong from your Cowboys.
Yeah, it seems like Dan Quinn is just sniping every one of his ex-players. There's a lot of connections here. Anthony Lynch, he's the running back coach for Washington. He used to be the head coach for the Chargers when Eckler was there. So that's a big signing. Good for Bobby Wagner. Good for those Commanders. Well, all right, man. How about we wrap this thing up? Any last words you have to say?
Don't lose hope. Those out there that haven't got that guy they got their eye on, don't lose hope. There's tons of talent still out there. And like I always say, we'll see you next week. The next one is the best one.
I am losing hope, Antonino.
Hang in there.
All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the First and 30 podcast. Until next week, remember, when your number's called, no matter the odds, Just go for it.
I'm blue, I've been beat up.